Thank you for joining me today, Kellie. So can you give us a quick introduction of who you are?
Okay, so I am a mum of 3. I have a background in fostering. I was the director of a fostering agency for 16 years, which before that I was a child that fostered. So my parents fostered when I was growing up. So I think advocacy has always really been very ingrained in me, in how I'm built. So I worked at a fostering agency, matching children with families, with a group of, with a team of social workers. So it was very rewarding. And then Oscar was born. So when Oscar was born, my other children were 11 and 6. So I'd had a very separate parenting journey with them. You know, we met every milestone and we were maybe a little bit precious. And then Oscar came, and I was 29 when Oscar was born, and we started to not meet milestones and have, all of a sudden it seemed like a team of people, and he was he was like 18 months old. And they were saying, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. And, you know, the language around that, I think, in the early years, pre-assessment, is very damaging, because lots of people talk about what you can't do, what skills you don't have. They're not celebrating. And I felt very invaded, because I felt like I wasn't able to enjoy my baby. I felt like everyone was damning him. Everyone was telling me what he wasn't. And I just saw this really precious little boy that saw life in a different way. You know, he wanted to enjoy the book a bit longer, enjoy the puzzle more. He was exploring his sensory diet. He was enjoying the breeze in the trees, and he was a different experience to us. But ultimately, at that point, we weren't meeting any challenges, and I couldn't really see what all the fuss was about. You know, I did know about autism. I did have awareness about neurodiversity. I worked with children with complex and multiple disabilities, and I was always a fierce advocate. And I remember thinking back, this has to be my job now. I have to advocate for him, because I felt we were being signposted and almost pushed towards services, which I'm grateful for now, because I think early years intervention is really, really important.
Yeah.
But at the time, I wasn't welcoming of it, because I thought, well, we are meeting need. He's not failing. There just seemed to be a lot of damaging language around, we didn't seem to be allowed to celebrate anything about him. We were just told what he wasn't, what he isn't, what he's failing at. And when, we were invited over to the Children's Assessment Centre, and we visited there probably 3 times. And then I was invited to a meeting, and I walked into a room, and I can always remember it. Brendan said to me, my husband, do you want me to come with you? And I was like, no, it's just another meeting. And I got there, and I was bombarded by about 10 professionals, and they were all giving me loads of information. So before I'd even sat down, one of them said, Oscar's autistic. How do you feel about that? Like 3, 2, 1. How do you feel about that? He's autistic. And I said, well, I think I probably kind of already knew. You're not giving him autism. He is who he is. I don't really see labelling him at this point beneficial, to be honest. And he was, the early years intervention we got, I think the journey of how we received his diagnosis could be better. It could have been better. It didn't really allow for any exploration. It was very time limited. It was very, okay, we've got to wrap this up now. Here's some leaflets, off you go. But he was introduced to a very lovely early years nursery, which they did an observation and assessment on him, and he went to their early years for 1 year, and then he went to the Mary Sheridan unit, which was all held in the hospital for 2 years. Then he transitioned to school. So that's his journey. So for me, I've had 2 very different parenting journeys, which I suppose has made me an advocate, and I advocate on clothing. That's Oscar's voice. We have had experiences in the world that haven't always been very nice, that haven't always been inclusive, and we basically we use Born Anxious as Oscar's voice. So we are connected to a few charities. We are charity champions of Work for Good UK and a Kennedy online. And we like to really, I suppose, communicate through clothing. And that's what I do. I had to give up my job when Oscar received his diagnosis because you know me and you know I want to do things at 100%. And I wasn't able to do that. So, yeah, that's me. So lots of plates spinning.
So
Trying,
I was going to go straight into questions about parenting, but I
yeah,
think I'm actually going to start with questions about born anxious actually, and then we'll come
okay,
back to parenting if that's okay.
yeah.
So you shared some of the story around born anxious, but can you share with me your story behind born anxious and what inspired you to start the venture, which we obviously know, but can you go into a little bit more detail about, you know, how that came about?
Yeah, so it's a really simple, there's no big revelation. We were traveling, we were going on a long haul flight. And at that time, at 2.5, 3, Oscar presented like a scribble. He was just everywhere. He
Yeah.
was very uncomfortable in the world, very unhappy in the world. He didn't like to wear clothes. He used to lash out. He was quite boisterous. But I think on face value, he just looked like this little cherub and everyone wanted to touch him. Like everyone's like, oh, he's so cute because he's really chubby, you know, little blonde hair, little cute little face. And it was then when people were coming into his safety zone, he would then attack. He would
Yeah.
attack them. He was like a wild raccoon. And we were traveling and I said to Brendan, I really need, literally, he needs to be wearing a warning. Because if anyone comes near him, especially in a closed space like an aeroplane. So the first thing that happened was I was written to by the airline and they informed me that they'd let everyone know around us that there was somebody with autism traveling with us and it gives them the opportunity to move, which I was really offended by. So I thought we need to wear a warning here. So I made him a T-shirt with a B on it and it said, "Be kind, I have autism." And actually I'm fibbing. I bought him one online and I wash everything. And I washed it and it shrunk and it was a triangle and it was awful fabric. And I thought, he's not going to wear that. We'll
No.
be naked on the plane. He is not going to wear that. So I bought, I spoke to a local printer, a friend of mine, and I bought an organic T-shirt online and I went to him and we designed a B and it said, "Be kind, I have autism." And I made him one for on the way there and one for on the way back. And that's what we used. And while I was on the plane, I started to just write a list of other warnings that I wanted to give people because ultimately the one thing that inhibits Oscar is anxiety.
Yeah.
It isn't autism. It isn't ADHD. It's his actual anxious state. It controls his behaviour, controls his impulses, controls if he eats or not. Everything rides on whether or not he's regulated. So actually, the most important message I feel that we do on clothing is "I'm anxious" because I think it tells everybody what they need to know.
Yeah.
And then the second one that followed that was buffering because Oscar has language
My favourite.
processing delay. And I felt that when you're small and everyone's big, people don't give you enough time to respond. And I noticed he was missing activities because by the time he'd got used to the idea of doing it, someone was tidying it away. And he was missing out on those opportunities to respond, communicate, take part in things because
Yeah.
people were given a set limit of time. Very much like, I suppose, when we were given the diagnosis, we were given a set period of time that someone had a preset idea of how long it's going to take you to do that. And they
No
don't
time
allow.
to process anything.
They don't allow. So I'm buffering. So we celebrate all those. So that's the original story. It was, how is Oscar going to communicate with the world what his needs are? And what we do is we place that with you and then you do with that what you wish. You may wish to adapt how you approach us or how you treat our family. You may not. But that information has been passed to you in a subtle way. Because remember, I had 2 other children.
Yeah.
So you can't walk around the world going, firstly, I refuse to apologise for autistic behaviour because it's not behaviour, it's management of feelings. I'm a real stickler for that. It is not behaviour, it's feelings. And I will not apologise for the reactions that we have to the world. But you know what it's like. You can't control everybody in the world. So you are going to have some reactions and impulses. And I didn't want to be on a soapbox, and I didn't want to draw attention to my other children. So I thought, how are we going to share that message? And the best subtle way is to have it on a t-shirt, and then I'm holding them up like Simba as we get on this aeroplane, showing everyone what the message is, because I thought, no, deal with it. This is what our family are managing. My other children are doing really well here. It's not easy to manage. And what happened was it flipped the narrative, because people started going, you're doing a really good job. Yeah. Not what I have had, which is if he was mine, he'd be getting a smack. Because what they see is a little boy trying to rip his mum's hair out. So we found that the responses and the feedback that we were getting was so positive, because we moan that people have preset ideas about how our kids present. Yeah. But the flip side of that is we're not sharing with them what's going on. So I do think it's an exchange, isn't it? Everything works two ways. And I think if you think about that, it's not somebody's fault they have preset ideas. I don't think anyone sets out to be ignorant. I know that there are some people that are very narrow-minded and won't have their minds changed. But what I've found is actually the majority of people, if you are willing to share a different insight, they're willing then to meet you halfway. And then that's when experiences change and you start wanting to experience the world. Yeah. So I really think that they are a really valuable tool. And what I did at the beginning, they were really therapeutic for me, because what I would do is I would make a design and then I would link it to a blog of a lived experience that we've had as a reason why. Yeah. So they all belong to a lived experience of somebody. And some of those experiences have been traumatic for him. And it's really lovely when someone sends you a picture and they said, oh, we wore that T-shirt on this day, and I thought it was going to fall on its face. But actually, we really found kindness. Yeah. And we had a great time. So I just think there's so much power in clothing, in messages.
It changes people's perspective, doesn't it? Because, like you say, someone can look at you and say, oh, if he was mine, I'd give him a smack. But then when you give them the knowledge of the situation that they're unaware of, it does change their perspective, which is powerful.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of power in changing how we think. Because when, it's okay to be wounded. I've done a blog called The Walking Wounded, and I think it's really easy to get a little bit of an attitude about that. People are not staring at my family. They are not wishing my family bad. What's actually happening is I'm sitting on the information that could probably change that, and maybe I'm being a bit precious about it. Absolutely. And I think that as human beings, we do all want to look for the bad. We do.
It's human nature.
Do. And really, when you look for the good, it's a little bit like, I have a child that is very avoidant of everything, and it's his anxiety. He shuts himself down. Right. So what we have to do is force the joy, because it is there. That moment is there, but you've got to work for it. And it's the same with inclusion and awareness. Not everybody is programmed to be aware of what families go through. You only know about it because you live it. They don't. They live their life. So why would they know about you? So I think that it's really, really important, and it is about opening conversations. And that starts in your own community, because communities are really powerful, because it goes like this, outwards. It's all right being in the mainstream media, but that's tomorrow's fish and chip paper. Yeah. in your community, people remember you, and then they tell somebody else, because it's more on the ground. It's that local, because otherwise it can be seen as not genuine. You know, of course I want in the paper that we've put on a fashion show and we've got 25 neurodiverse models on the runway and it's never been done before. But the reason why that was a success is because we had real people that have lived and know what the barriers are, that have all said there is no limit to reasonable adjustments. There's only effort. And I think that there is nothing that people can't achieve with reasonable adjustments, but people will vary their levels of effort they give you. Yes. So if you make it about real people and something that they can relate to, they're more likely to give you more effort. Because I don't know about you, but I always think the biggest differences to us are all the tiny little things that people do. And they're the thoughtful things.
Yeah, the genuine ones.
I'll create a safe space. I'll turn the music down without being asked. I'll worry about the door banging. There's a mat there.
Asking how you are.
Yeah, and creating space for people, because it's those, and I've experienced this week, and I know you know, and I won't talk about it, but it's when people overlook the person. Yeah. We don't want to generalize anyone with neurodiversity, because that doesn't allow room for your personality. You might like something somebody else doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Kind of puts you it just puts you in another box, because like you say, we are autistic. We're not just like, we shouldn't be just defined by our condition. We're still a person. I'm Charlotte, you know, it's just a part of who I am. But unfortunately, people are risking just that. Taking someone from one box and placing them in the other doesn't really help.
No, and I think that is why community and your local, that local on the ground education is so important, because people don't realise how damaging that is until they have experienced it. And if they're not autistic or neurodivergent, they're not going to experience it. And unless they're a parent, carer or an advocate, they're not going to see the impact of that, because lots of people mask. So it might be seen to be okay to do something. So therefore that person will continue to do that. But then when you get home, that person may have an event which impacts on their well-being, emotional well-being, mental health, that's unseen. So I think it's just really, really important to don't overcomplicate it. Just have it in black and white terms and be open to that conversation. Because if you are open about, you know, it's not a secret club that we're all part of where we're not going to tell you what makes people tick. It's really simple human nature. Celebrate people for who they are, celebrate the skills they have, and validate what's going on for them. That's as simple as it is. And then if you need to make a reasonable adjustment for somebody, not everybody, because you'll never do that in a million years, and have time to listen. Because I think the most important thing that I have experienced when Oscar is dealing with services is people do not listen. They don't listen. They want to generalise. And the reason why they want to generalise is not because they don't care about Oscar. It's because the bandwidth doesn't allow anything to be personal anymore, because there's so many of everything. So what they need is they need to write down on a piece of paper what's wrong with and what's going to fix you. And then they want you to go away. And that's why services won't promote anything sensory, because there's no end to it. Anything holistic or anything is too big. So they want to say, well, we'll give you 6 sessions of speech therapy, because that's what we think will fix the problem, which you and I know that's probably going to get your child comfortable enough to even sit down. Because they can't measure. They want those services to be private, so that that's something that you manage. So I think in terms of educating people about what we're doing, where we're going, what our beliefs are, is be an open book. Be open to a conversation. Don't be afraid to answer a question, because you're answering it about you. not
Yeah.
about the whole community of people with autism and everyone that's got a neurodiversity. You're just answering it
Hello.
from you.
Is it me? Oh, you paused there for a second. I think it was one of our one of our connections went a little bit.
Ah,
I
yeah,
was
you
gonna
going a bit.
say a
Yeah.
little bit
So
fuzzy. So how I was gonna then go on from that point was then, what would
yeah,
you say then are your main key principles and values that guide Born Anxious to creating those inclusive and comfortable clothing for neurodivergent
okay.
individuals?
So I think it's about I mean, one of the messages that we hold really dear is that no reasonable adjustment is ever too big. It's whether or not you want to put the effort in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I do believe that everybody should be celebrated for who they are and the skills they bring. We shouldn't be categorizing anybody. I think everybody should be celebrated for who they are,
As an
because
individual.
a diagnosis is a very small part of who you are. Your personality is the main part of who you are,
Yeah.
regardless of what impacts that. And I think that inclusion is something that I'm very, very passionate about, because it's not a favour and it should
Mm-hmm.
never be met by an invitation. If you're inviting someone to something, you're saying, I think you fit there. So I'm a real one for everybody needs to be available for everything all the time. And if that means you need to make an adjustment so they can attend, then there's no question that's what you
Yeah.
do. But as a brand, I think that our core values are using organic fabrics, reducing our carbon footprint. We make everything to order. I don't like mass production of anything. And I also want to put my hands on what you've ordered and make it for you.
Mm.
And
Personal.
you know, I pride myself on that. I remove all the labels by hand. We only use organic fabrics. Um, what else? I like to donate to charities. I think it's really important to also donate to community-based projects that pay back into experiences for autistic people. We are part of the Breakout project in Bracknell, which is we provide clothing and then they do a pop-up at a local charity shop for autistic adults. And it's about getting them into employment, and it really begins with, how am I going to plan my day? Am I going to get there by bus? What am I going to be on time? What am I going to wear? It's all about those real key skills to seeking employment, because as you know, a large amount, I think it's 70%, it might be more than that, of autistic adults are not in paid employment. So this is
Yeah.
a scheme that will give them the skills they need, and the success rate is very high. So they do a project with them, which is we provide clothing for them. They have a charity shop pop up. They also have an allotment of organic veg,
Okay.
work in the allotments. There's a community garden in Bracknell that the outreach project run. And I haven't had any communications with them for quite a while, because I think that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are now that were on the project are in paid employment. So it's brilliant.
That's
But that's
amazing.
one. And we also sponsor a local 16 plus all ability football team, which is
Okay.
amazing. And that celebrates skills. And some of them wear football boots and some of them don't like to. So it's all very about reasonable adjustments. And they enter local leagues and win.
Yeah.
They're
That's amazing.
fantastic. And then, as you know, I do lots of work with Anna Kennedy online. So, we like to contribute and play our part. I think business isn't always about making money, it's about making a difference in your community and wider. Yeah, so we're proud. I'm really proud of what we've built and what it means, I think. So what challenges have I encountered? Well, I think that um, lockdown was interesting, very
So annoying.
interesting. But we did still have, obviously, our page and platform, so we used it to promote positivity, and we really concentrated on mental health and well-being rather than sales. So I think it's really nice to have that constant platform. And obviously with the lived experience that I've got, if I experience something, I pay it forward. So I don't just use Born Anxious to promote clothing. I use Born Anxious to communicate with other parents that were maybe where I was 5 years ago, which is feeling very isolated on my own. So I like to think that there's a really high support element to that. I think that the cost of living crisis has put everyone in a bit of a position where, we are not maybe perhaps able to buy what we want to buy. But we're very independent, I think, because I've built this on my own and I'm the only staff member. I do everything. We don't have huge overheads. So I'm hoping that keeps us in a place where we can sustain what we've got going. There's not high elements of risk there. And I think that's what I want, because I think that Born Anxious is more than a clothing label. It's something that benefits the community. So yeah, not that many challenges. The only challenge I personally have is navigating services with my son, as Charlotte knows. So Oscar he's 10 this year. He was given a very woolly diagnosis at 2 and referred out to lots of other services. And it's only been this year, when he's been referred to Evelina in London, because we've exhausted everybody, that we're starting to become clearer with what his needs actually are and what his diagnosis is. So that's a personal one. And I think having a platform like Born Anxious, you've got to be very careful with what you share and what you moan about, because it's not my soapbox, it's everybody's platform. So I do troubleshoot for people, and I do advocate for lots of people, but I do try and only ever share positive things on there, because I think there's enough negativity in the world. And I think that we hold a responsibility to try and just encourage people just to take that one step. I think that's all you ever need to worry about, the step that's in front of you, and be brave, and always be, even if you're frightened in a meeting, always have your own voice and use it. So yeah, the barriers are really just people in general, that don't give me my own way, things like that, personal. But life's funny, isn't it? Because I think every year of my life I've had a different journey. At the moment we are now a blended family, because we have the responsibility of children that I gave oath to, that I would be their godmother, and now their mother's not here. So I'm in her shoes advocating for them with EHCs and independent living and all of that. And I'm proud of that, because I think that to me, will you be the godmother? Will you be the godmother? It's not taken seriously enough. And I'm now living that decision. And I meant what I promised in the beginning, and I will fulfill that to my best ability. I'm not going to half do it. So I'm really proud of our family, because I think my children have really adapted well to having a severely autistic brother. Oscar's severely autistic, severe ADHD, learning impairment, ARFID eating disorder, extreme anxiety, absent seizures. We've got the whole pick and mix going on. And I think when you're 11 or you're 6, like they were, and your life's pretty cushy and everything's pretty set, and all of a sudden you can't do that anymore and you can't do this anymore. And, we've all evolved together, and they're great advocates for Oscar. They really are. And we've just got on the smooth again. And now our family's changed again. And they've adapted again. Our family was just open with open arms. George comes, Lorcan willingly gives his bedroom up. No question, no moans. He's 16. They're so adaptable. And I think that is what they've got from, if you're an advocate, I think if you're an authentic advocate, it's ingrained in you. And I think I've passed it on to them, because they don't question it. That's just how it is. They don't even say, Lorcan doesn't even say, is George coming? It just goes without saying that if we're going somewhere, George is with us, because he's part of our family now. So I just think every year you're always going to have challenges. And what I say is, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, give it 5 minutes. Because if you concentrate on that drama, and you can become it. And I think there's a lot in manifestation. There's a lot about, if you're positive in your mindset, then you will have positive outcomes and you will meet challenges. But I think you have to be realistic about how you face them. If you go,
Yeah.
oh, poor me, this is rubbish, this isn't working, it probably isn't going to work.
And it also it draws more to you,
Yeah,
I believe.
absolutely. And I don't look too far in front, especially since Lucy's died. I do look at life differently. You have to just go for it. Be brave. As long as you're not hurting anyone and you're being a kind person and it's coming from an honest place, you should, everyone's human and everyone's just equal. I don't have a hierarchy. I just treat everyone the same. And I think if you're being authentically yourself, that's okay. It's okay to know that people don't agree with you. It doesn't mean you have to not like them. They just don't agree with you. That's fine. Allow for that. It's not all roses, is it? I think, life is hard for some people. And it's okay to say, well, that's really bad that's happening to you. And it's okay to celebrate when you win, which I think
Yeah.
none of us are any good at doing. And I think that, there are people that you might look at and think, oh, they're so lucky. I've had people say to me, you're so lucky. Am I though? Or
No,
did I just
because yeah.
work hard? Because I think
Not just that, but I think as well it's your mindset and your attitude towards life makes you a better person, and I bet a happier person than you would be if you were the other way.
yeah,
And
I just want
people are too busy focusing on what doesn't matter, when if they were to have a similar mindset and attitude to you,
yeah.
they'd be lucky too.
Well, the thing is, I want everyone to win. If I can help someone think differently or attract less drama and be happier, because there's no price on peace.
No.
I don't want to argue about things that don't matter, and I don't want to worry about things that don't matter. In your life, you have to prioritize your own health and you have to prioritize your own well-being. And then I think people around you will learn to live that way too. I'm not perfect. I get things wrong, but I'm not lucky. I've worked very hard, and I'm okay to say that. I have worked very hard, and I don't prioritise myself in anything. I don't feel myself better than anybody else. And I say that to my kids, and I've always said it, everyone's different and everyone's special. And I think that comes from working in fostering. And a really good example of how, because, a lot of people say to me, if you viewed your kids through two-way glass, you wouldn't recognise them, because your kids are an extension of you. You don't own them. You can't tell your kids how to behave. You can just hope that you're raising a fairly decent human being and that you've done
Yeah.
enough. But ultimately, they're going to make their own decisions and they're going to make their own mistakes, and you can advise them, but you don't own them. Which, as I'm finding out, Ola's 21 now, and she's making some really good choices and decisions that I'm proud of her for. I'm not influencing them. She's a good egg. But when I think back to Ola and growing up, a really good example of evidence that you've sown the right seeds in the right places is, one of our family rules is, if you can't fix it in 30 seconds, don't comment. And I think that's really important, because looks are irrelevant, but actually feelings are not. And the two are linked. And why would you want to sow seeds in someone or make them feel uncomfortable about, if someone's got lipstick on their tooth, tell them. If they've got a massive mountain growing on their forehead, I'm pretty sure they're aware it's there.
Yeah.
And a good example of this is, Ola was once in an audition, and she's a performer, as you know, and someone pulled, one of the casting directors, and it was a West End show, pulled her to the side and said to her in her face, "What race are you?" So she turned around and said, "I'm human." And that was it. And I said to her, that's the only reply you ever need to give. Because that is ultimately the only race that you are. Unless you're celebrating an ethnic minority that should be celebrated because they've been, not equally treated, you have, I suppose, white privilege for someone to turn you around and say, what race are you? Because they're not going to do that of someone who's clearly. And so she said, I'm human. As if to say, what are you? And and I think that that's all we can hope for, isn't it? In that the platform that Born Anxious has got, we're doing right by the planet. We need to do right by the people. And the only way we can do that is by being honest and being our true self. Because I do a lot of collaborations, as you know. And the reason why I do a lot is because I can't say no. And the reason I can't say no is because maybe someone who's famous is only an equal to me as someone who's not. So, if someone wants to have a collection, I'm not saying
That's why I've not pushed for mine, Kelly, because I know that,
Well, I'm not saying contact me for a company. I'm not saying that. I'll get a bombardment of, but who am I to say who can have one and who can't if they've got a good idea? Why shouldn't they have their ideas? So for me, I love people. You know me, I love people. I love people. But I'm not a pushover. And I think being kind, it's not about being a mark. It's not about not being able to advocate for yourself.
Kindness for weakness.
Yeah, if someone is tripping over what you believe in, I do think that you should be able to say so. But I think that conflict doesn't play a part in that. For me, I don't do conflict. I might tell you the truth and I might tell you what I think, but it wouldn't come with feelings attached to it. It would just be as it is. So I just see things quite simply, really.
Yeah. Deal with it and move on. Don't dwell, which I've seen firsthand.
Nothing that's ever worth having is easy. There's not a prize. Someone's not going to come out and go, "Oh, you've done really well. Here's a hug and $5 million." And
if only.
and also anyone I know that has money is unhappy. So I'm not chasing that. I don't chase that. I chase actually what I want for the brand is probably to just help people be a bit stronger and advocate for themselves and, share information and make things more inclusive. I think you can't put a price on that.
No.
So that's me. I'm very tired. I don't get enough sleep. What I do is I will leave it until really late. And then I think, I know I should go to bed, but I really don't want to because I want to have some me time now.
Yeah.
Or I can't
can relate to that.
About it. Can't stop thinking about an idea. So I'll be in bed, but I'll be on my phone because I'm planning something or I'm writing wording or, because when you're quite creative, I think it's hard to switch off, isn't it? Do you find that?
I think poor Kate can relate to that because she gets notifications from me from all hours. I always say, I really hope your notifications are off, but I have this idea, and if I don't send it over now, I won't because I'll forget, or it will go and it will just add to my index. But I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, and I think for me, I have ideas in the night, and I have to get up and write them down.
Yep, I'm exactly the same.
That's me, and I'm neurotypical, I think. I don't know. But I also write poetry. I write poems a lot. And they could probably be song lyrics. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But it all helps me because if something is in there, I have to get it out. I have to, because otherwise it grows. Like on this Zoom yesterday with the team, I had loads of ideas and I knew that I needed to shut up and I couldn't. I couldn't. I just couldn't. So, but I'm really just, hopeful, I think, for attitudes. And I think that autism awareness and, neurodiversity awareness, it's got more traction than it ever has before. It's being reframed. And that's what I like about the peer support. And I know we'll do a separate call about that. But I really like the parent in me would be a bit worried about what the future looks like for children like Oscar. Because he's not able to advocate for himself. And now I'm working with the team that I'm working with, and I'm looking at what's being reframed. It's making me feel a bit better, because so much of
Positive.
that policy and everything, it needs updating. And there's
Yeah.
clear evidence that that is being done. And for me, I like being part of that side of it. You know,
Okay, well, do you know what? I think that's the perfect way to round off Born Anxious and now go into your parenting with my
okay.
gorgeous Oscar.
Uh,
So,
uh,
as a parent, carer to a child with complex needs, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of your role? Which is perfect because, as we know, you like to speak about positive sides.
yes. Well, Oscar is very joyful. He really is. I mean, he does have anxiety, and it's very sad because sometimes he has times where he doesn't play, and he stops himself from doing things that he might enjoy, like the hot tub. Or a good measure of his anxiety is if you open the hot tub and he's in there, and if not, he says no hot tub allowed. So that's a good measure. Like yesterday, I put his bounce castle up in the garden because we live on the coast. It's very windy here still and overcast. It's not sunny. And it is too cold really to get in the hot tub. So I put the bounce castle up for him, and he didn't get on it once. And, you know, a non-anxious Oscar would be refusing to get off of it. So, but he's very joyful. He's got amazing dance moves. He's very cheeky. He likes to remember song lyrics. He's got an affinity to languages. So his Evelina assessment, they were unable to do the speech side because he switched to speaking in Spanish for the assessment. So I like to think that Oscar has added ingredients. That's what we've said. You know, he's very quirky. I think if he was more vocal, I think he probably would be some kind of performer. He's
I
got
was going to
a
say, I
voice.
reckon he'd be a stand up comic because he's made me laugh a few
He is
times.
so funny. And it's and what Oscar does is he always gives you that added moment of joy. And it's always really impromptu. You know, Orla's 21st, we've got all the lights out. She's just blown the candles out, and this little voice starts singing happy birthday, and he sung the whole song and said her name unprompted.
Oh,
You know, so I think he knows when he's regulated enough, he knows exactly what's going on and when he can, you know. But he's a real creature of habit. He loves bedtime. He likes his comforts. He collects things in his bed. And last night I lined all his books up, and as I shut the door, he went, "Mom, Smith's Toys Guides." And he's got 3 Smith's catalogues that I hid because one of the pages has got a crease and it upsets him. But he wanted them in there last night as well. So he's got little quirky things that he does and says. But I think he's just so joyful because he sees the world as it is. He seeks his own sensory diet. He loves the elements. He loves nature. He loves music. He loves the sea. He loves animals. And he just sees the planet as being beautiful. He likes the wind in his hair. He likes to run fast. He likes to splash in the puddles. He likes popping bubbles. And all the things that people overlook,
yeah.
actually, that bring you joy. He's not interested in any of the complicated things in life. You know, he's 10. He's not interested in phones. He doesn't game. You know, he has a different friend every day. You know, he'll hide with a little boy under the coats and be giggling. The next day he's forgotten about it, moving on to someone else. Oscar doesn't have complications in his life. It's all about now, instant impulses. Does that meet my need right now? Because I can only think about right now. And he's about, you know, when he's not anxious, he wants to have a good time. You take him to a disco and he's dancing within 2 minutes like it's the end of the night. You know, he's enjoying everything to its fullest. And, you know, he's told me this morning, "Death by a Thousand Kites," which I think is
Oh,
a song by Taylor Swift, but I think it's "Death by a Thousand Cuts." But he's been singing "Death by a Thousand Kites."
that sounds so much, well, without the death part, but Thousand Kites sounds lovely.
Yeah, yeah. So he's, you know, he's a very emotive child. He lives his emotions. He can feel them very strongly, and he's very expressive of them. Um, And he called me the feelings doctor the other day, which was really cute. But then in the next breath, he's telling me to die. So,
Oh
and
gosh.
because that's how he feels in that moment. But if you buy a
It's
bunch
like
of
a pure honesty, isn't it?
yeah, it's a real beauty. If you buy a bunch of bananas, he's going to peel them all and pretend to fall over on the skins because he wants. Yeah. So parenting Oscar has been really rewarding, really eye-opening. The hardest job that I never applied for that I've ever had. One that I'm, probably the most important job that I will ever do in my life. And I've helped hundreds of looked after children and advocated for them like they were my own. So it was a no-brainer that I would be able to advocate for my own child. And I'm advocating for other people's children too. So I just feel like parenting, you can't get it wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. No one's perfect, and not everyone is good at parenting. I used to find it
No.
really hard to parent Orla. I was like, she's going to be either running a gang in prison or being the prime minister. It's going to be a really fine line here. She was so determined. And then when we were parenting, Lorcan, I was like, I hope we managed to keep this one alive because he was really daring. And then with Oscar, we've kind of encapsulated him. It's almost like he's got two sets of parents because he's got a 21-year-old sister, a 16-year-old brother, and then he's got me and Brendan, and he's in the middle. So he's kind of got us where he wants us. He's very loved, and we want. I think for us, whereas when Orla was little, I used to sometimes get out of going to birthday parties. I'd be like, oh, she's got a bit of a sniffle because I used to think that's 2 hours in a soft play. I'm not going to get back.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But with Oscar, I'm just glad that he's been invited. And we're going to be the first to be there and the last to leave. And he's going to enjoy every single minute because those invitations don't always come. So it's very different. And I think that parenting him, it's become more about enjoying him and loving him. Like, I do feel really smug. Like, I'm very, very proud to be a parent of a child with disabilities. But I do feel smug because my Christmases are going to last forever. The Easter Bunny is going to last forever. And letting go of Orla and letting her become independent was really hard for me because she's my first. And we visited all of them. Whereas with Lorcan, I probably will be like, oh, this is brilliant. He's, because at the moment he's 16 and I can't really see him being independent. I can just see him where he is. But, with Oscar, Brendan and I have been together 24 years. We've pictured maybe our retirement to look a little bit different. But with Oscar, we're a bit smug. He's going to need us forever. I think that's beautiful. He's never going to not live here. And we have to maybe, now he's 10, think about safety making changes to our house, which has been very preschool up to now. And now we're able to open the front door. And that's fine, So we just have decided that separately we need to be able to, get off the ride sometimes and recharge because we're not only parents to Oscar. Together, we need to be able to have some time as well, which hopefully will come. It hasn't in the last 10 years, but hopefully it will now because we've got PAs and the team Oscar is looking the best it's ever looked. So I'm quite excited for the next bit because I think that he's done so amazing. So proud of him. His journey is huge up to now, which has kind of fueled us for the next bit. I do think that there's no limits with him. I'm really hopeful for that. And I think really it's about making the world as big as we can for him. Because there's nothing he can't do. We might only do half of it, but we're still doing it. I don't shy away from anything with him. Traveling, he's been to lots of places, been to Europe loads, been to America, been loads of places and done lots of things. And I want him to have had all of those experiences because I know loads of mums that go, oh no, they wouldn't like that. And I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know?
I can relate to that.
It's about confidence, isn't it? Because If we went somewhere at the weekend and we had a bad experience, probably 5 years ago, that would have put me off doing it again. I'd be like, no, it's dangerous. We're not doing it. You know, whereas now we're able to sit back and go, actually, we need to put some more adjustments
Reasonable adjustments.
and try again. You know, because I
Yeah.
want every experience to be positive. And that's why we arrive at school late every day, because at least we're regulated.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be late.
And not just that, an experience could be a bad one, but it could be outside factors, but it could also be maybe that child's just not having the greatest day. Should they then not ever be able to experience life because of it? No.
Yeah.
Try again.
Well, I think that's the main thing that we overlook as well, is feelings. Because we don't always feel like doing stuff. I might be really upbeat one day, and the next day I might be like, do you know what? I don't really want to talk to anyone today. I just want to clean my house, be in my own head. So I think that's what and it's all come by, I suppose, we don't always get it right with Oscar. And we're able to actually just talk about it and say, you know, that didn't go great. Let's, you know, whereas maybe years ago, we would have got stressed about that and there might have been a bit of a row about it, you know. So I think now we're getting wiser and longer in the tooth. We don't, because it's not, when things go bad, it's not a reflection on parenting. It's the circumstances that you're in. It's not Brendan's fault if Oscar screams all day. He's come home from work. I'm not going to go to him, Oscar's been screaming all day, because it's not him, is it? You know, so, and I think it takes a different outlook to think like that. You know, Brendan knows and respects that Oscar's really hard work. You know, he consumes my whole day. I'm not allowed to do anything. My arms are down by my side. He wants to place me in certain areas of the room, and I have to sneak off and go on my phone or sneak the washing out of the line or whatever, on the days that he's feeling like that. And then on other days, you know, we're at a theme park and he's on the bumper cars wailing his head off like any other 9-year-old. So I don't want to limit him, and I don't want to ever be part of conversations that talk about what he can't do, especially by someone who's never met him. I challenge them. I say, how do you know he can't do that? You've never met him before. You know, what
You are a
know,
brilliant advocate.
damaging language, isn't it? And he can remember, he can hear them. He's been told by someone he can't ride a bike. He's been told by someone that he can't go on a swing. He's been told by someone that he's proprioceptions, all of that. No, stop. I stop them. I say, no, we're not having that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not doing that, because I think that, you know, Oscar does have learning impairment and we are really aware of that. And he will feel how we tell him to a point that he feels about saying. So if, you know, we do affirmations, I am strong, you know, I am brave, because that becomes his inner voice.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around, you know, so I think our parenting style is very probably dysfunctional, just enough to give them a sense of humour. And we don't sweat the small stuff, because life really is not long enough for that, you know.
Well, I know this goes against your beliefs because you do like to be positive. However, I am also a strong believer that people also do respect the realness, and sometimes things are hard.
Yeah.
And so as much as I'm the same, I like to put a spotlight on the positive whilst also being real and honest when I am having a hard time. Yeah.
100%.
So my next question goes against everything, Kelly, is what are some of the unique challenges that you face as a parent carer, and how do you navigate and overcome them? And I ask you that because as much as I think people will love watching and hearing you speak the way you advocate for Oscar, I do think it's also important to always be honest and real and share those negatives so that people who are having a hard time can relate and find comfort in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you will.
I think the main, for me, I think my soul is tired. I'm tired of fighting. Everything feels a fight all of the time. And you can dress that fight up to be positive, but really, we shouldn't really be having the fight in the first place. I think that's draining when you fight services and you fight for everything, inclusion. You think you're going forward, you're not. You're 10 steps back. You're doing it again. over and over again. And I think that's something that we all connect with, and it's unspoken, isn't it? But I think it is important to speak about it, because some people are on the very beginning of their journey. Also, I think being a parent carer, it's very lonely. You're lonely in your head, really. You can be in a room with other people, and unless they're like-minded, and unless they're parent carers too, you do feel like an alien.
Yeah.
I can't relate to a lot of my friends that have got kids, because I know they don't know what I'm feeling. Because I am smug that Christmas lasts forever, and I am smug that Oscar's going to need us forever. I'm also a bit worried about that, because the other side of that is what actually happens to Oscar when I'm not here anymore.
Yeah.
My friend was 42 when she died. I have to live until I'm 127. How do I make that? How do I make that happen? So I do think that the downsides are, it's lonely, not in terms of you don't have people to talk to. You do have people to talk to, but your journey is unique to you, and only you know how you feel about that. Like I have a different journey to Brendan. He's a dad. I'm the mum. So my connection and my relationship with my children is not more important than his, but it is definitely different.
Yeah.
So, I think that the way for me to heal that is to try and help other people that might be feeling like that. But I did a blog recently, and it was called "Is Being a Parent Carer a Job?" Because there is a little bit of a belief that, well, that's what mums do. Well, no, not really, because this mum doesn't want to get kicked in the face in the morning, and this mum doesn't want to clear up poo, or there are parts of your job as a mum that are the job of a carer.
Yeah.
Do go outside of the mum role, I believe. And not all mums have to leave their heart at the door while they take their child for an EEG and they know they're going to be pinned down. That's not a mum's job. That's hard. So I think there are parts of being a parent carer that are really, really hard, and they don't get easier.
No.
My almost 10-year-old wears nappies. That's not something that is comfortable probably for him. I'm not embarrassed of that at all. We go to the beach and I'll put a swimming nappy on him. But I know Brendan has a massive issue with that, and that can cause contention there. Oh, don't take your shorts off. He's got a nappy on. He's massive, because Brendan's point is he's not embarrassed of Oscar, but he doesn't want Oscar to feel maybe that someone might be staring at him. Whereas
he's
my
protective.
thing is, well, let him look. Who cares? Oscar's not bothered. But Brendan's thing is, well, he might be though. You don't know. So that's bad, So I think that I've got better at accepting Brendan's opinion. And I think the reason why I didn't accept it before is because Oscar only wants me. So, and
I can relate to that.
It's been hard because at point, Brendan's felt a little bit like a spare part in the care because it's not been wanted. But I've kind of said to him, but your job is to support me, because what I'm doing is really, really hard. And I think because he's not done it, he doesn't understand how intense that is. So I do think that all of those points are really, really important to talk about, because they are there. Being a parent carer is 75% hard and 25% joy. That's the reality of it. But would I want to not do it? No. Of course I would want to do it. I don't want anyone else looking after my child. Of course I want to do it all the time that I can. But I do think it's about mindset, and I do think it's about looking after your own well-being. Because if you are not getting enough sleep, which none of us do, if you don't get enough sleep, you don't eat properly.
We're too busy researching in the early hours, Kelly. How are we going to get enough sleep?
Well, I think I've learned the hard way, because I really did have burnout. When Oscar started school, I gave up my job when Oscar was about 2. And then I thought I would be his full-time carer until he went to school. And then I would get a part-time job. So born anxious wasn't a thing then. Mm-hmm. And I found myself so bored. And that's when I created Born Anxious. And I decided to launch it on his first day of school, because I had him for nearly 5 years, because he's an October baby. So he was nearly 5 when he started school. Mm-hmm. I'd had him for 5 years. I mean, even when I did work, I only worked 2 mornings. So I'd had him all that time on my own, really. And I honestly thought, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do with all my time, apart from skip around the supermarket going, he's still safe, but he's not with me? Because those early years are really, really intense. Like, I honestly did not know what I would do without him, like what I would do with my time, because he'd consumed all of
Yeah.
my time to the point where I actually used to sit and wonder what I did before.
Yeah. I
But
can relate to that.
what did I do? Because, like, even today, before this call, I've emailed his Evelina nurse, ordered his Phenergan, and ordered his milk. Each thing took me about 20 minutes. I'd have been sitting on the sofa watching this morning, wouldn't I? But like Brendan said to me once, no, you wouldn't though, would you? Because that's not how you're built. You'd have been at work doing it for other people's kids. So,
Yeah.
but it is hard, and I find it is lonely. And I think it's only lonely because it's not that there are no people. There are people. But I think being a parent carer, it is so unique. It's such a unique journey, isn't it? And
It is.
you're always going to sit on your own with that. And I think how I do it is I don't like to not measure things, right? So if I'm not all right with something, I'll acknowledge that I'm not okay with it. Like when my friend died, I was not okay with that. I was sad about it, and I sat with that, and I became all right with being sad about it. And I decided that I was so sad about it because I had so much love still there. And that's what I was sad about, because now I've not got, and over the time that's evolved with, now someone gave me a bloody rose bush that I've got to try and keep alive, which is called Lucy. And I can't kill that, can I? So it's become about other things. There's other ways of loving her. She's not here, but there are other ways of loving her, like advocating for her children, not killing her rose bush, filling my garden up with flowers that my dogs eat. But I think with parent caring, that's what you have to do. You have to accept that it is hard and be all right with finding it hard and celebrating your wins as well. And I think acceptance is really big. I think once you accepting your role as a parent carer can take 2-3 years. For me, it did properly. And the way I do that is I accept that it's unmeasurable and I accept that it's really hard, but I won't be defeated. I'll always give it my best, and I won't always win. It's not about it making it perfect. It's not perfect.
Yeah. It's like acknowledging it, isn't it? It's like acknowledging and accepting and seeing it for what it is.
Yeah,
and getting on with it.
It is lonely and it is hard, but you're not on your own. You've got somebody else who's not in your boat, but they are in a boat, and they're next to you. They're not in your boat, but they are in a boat. It's the same storm, but it's a different boat. And if she sinks, you're going to tip her back up again. Make sure she's all right. And I think collectively, that's how we all carry each other. There's no quick fix. There's no magic. I used to really wish that a little leprechaun would jump out and go, "You've won a prize. You've got to level. That's really hard. You didn't die. There you go." But it's not going to happen. And you have to be realistic about that. Because you have to validate, we fight to validate our kids, but we don't validate ourselves.
No. That's very true. I think that's true for many parent carers.
We have to celebrate what our skills are. I'm a lot more skilled at things in terms of what's in my camp, because I would be in denial about it. I would happily advocate for someone else's speech therapy, but then I would pay a private one for mine because I didn't want to moan about it. And I think you have to. There's more than one way to have an argument, isn't there? It's not about being angry. Yeah. Remove your feelings and let's get the facts, because I'm a big one for that. Belief and fact, they're not the same thing. Don't believe something. Don't have a preset idea. What's actually the black and white truth of it? And let's just have that. And let's not have how we feel about it. Let's just have that. Because I think some things are bad enough without adding how you feel. And actually some things are a bit smaller than you thought they were when you remove your feelings. So Yeah, I'm quite real like that. But yeah, it is hard. Really hard. I feel about 125.
Well, you don't look
And I
it.
look it.
Okay.
I look about.
No, you do not.
Look and ask me I'm not going to say how old I am, but look and ask me how old I was the other day. And he went, "Is that all?" And I went, "What do you mean is that
Cheeky.
all? What do you mean is that all?" I said, "I'll take it. That's because you think that I'm wise." But yeah,
Told you, perspective.
I do seek lots of guidance and support from everybody. I know I do support lots of people, but I do seek guidance and support from everyone as well. And you're a great support to me. I really appreciate that. And I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's all about just helping each other out.
Well, that's the thing. It's about people working together. You're always going to be stronger because we've all got our own strengths and weaknesses, but together we can help each other navigate and then have better results. That's my belief. That's why I always want to collaborate and help where I can and work with people because it's just better,
Well, yeah, it
personally.
is. It's mutuality, isn't it? Like I can't comment about what you've got on your plate, and you can't me, but I validate what you've got on yours. It's not trumps. You know,
No.
you do find sometimes you meet people that goes, well, he's got all of this, da, 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 and then they bolt something on, and I just think, all right, okay.
Yeah. Or they'll hear your story and they say, okay, but, and then it's all about them and
Mm.
how much more important. But it doesn't matter. We all have our own
That's
issues
why
and
I'm
we all,
so. That's why I'm so positive because I don't have any minutes for that. You know, I don't do drama. I don't have minutes for that. I have minutes to use for good. And you know, time management, I'm not very good at. I'm time blind.
I'm exactly the same.
Uh,
Let me see what other questions we've got because I know there's loads of
right.
questions that we managed to answer just from having conversation.
Yeah,
So, can you share some insights? We did touch on this briefly, but can you share some insights into the importance of self care for parent carers and how to prioritize your well being amidst all of the demands that you're obviously your caring responsibilities?
yeah. I think it's easiest. You know, you can be a bit preachy about this, can't you? And it's easier said than done. You know, oh, look after yourself, well-being. But um, it's those really tiny, minor changes. I think that slowly, you know, get you because it's about having good routines and good habits. You know, if you don't take supplements, just start taking some supplements. If you want to go to bed earlier, bring it back by 15 minutes. Don't set yourself unachievable targets.
Right.
You know, it's the small steps, isn't it, that make the mile. You're not going to all of a sudden overnight go vegan, go running, go to bed 4 hours earlier, wear a face mask, start painting your toenails, and all. It's not going to happen. It's unachievable. So what I
Yeah.
do is, if I notice myself, I've got a bit of a comfort zone that I like to stay in, and if I notice that I'm maybe drinking too many fizzy drinks, or I'm forgetting to take my vitamins, or I set back in an achievable target, and then I make sure that that becomes routine again.
Yeah.
But if you're run down with flu in bed for 2 weeks, who's going to be advocating for your kids then? You know,
That's true.
you've got to prioritize your mental health, which is I am a really firm believer in having a really good clear out of limit your time on social media, go through having, you know, not everyone wishes you well, get them people out if you can. They don't deserve to be there. And also stop being the one that makes all the effort. Text messages go both ways. If your phone is not ringing, you're not on their mind.
Yeah.
Yes, because people can be exhausting, and we do enough um, of being the one.
Chasing.
So you know, be the one that receives. Oh, I haven't spoken to you for a little while. Sorry, I've been busy. How are you? You know,
Yeah.
or is someone messaging you to get information, or have they actually asked you how you are? And don't, your phone's not going to explode if you don't respond today, right now.
Yeah.
If you've got other things that you prefer to do, you know, I don't think I've read a book in about 5 years. I fall asleep at every people say, oh, reading's really mindful. Well, it might, but I haven't slept properly for 10 years, so reading's not an option for me. But what I like to do, I live near the sea, I like to go for a walk. I only need to walk for about 10-15 minutes and just have some time in my head. And I am lucky. Oscar loves walking in the woods or walking on the beach. And I find that really mindful. But I think it's about, for me, looking after yourself. It's not about unachievable targets, changing your diet, changing your sleep routine and all that. It's about the tiny little tweaks.
Yeah.
Arrive at school 10 minutes early, sit in your car, put your favourite music on, check out social media, be nosy. Don't comment on anything, just be nosy if that's what you want to do. Or once in a while, book your nails in the middle of a Saturday and say to everyone else, no, sorry, I've got an appointment. Don't always be the one that's always carrying everything. Remind them that you are allowed to go out for an evening. Have some... I've got friends too. I'm going to a concert. Don't... Because I think if you become the one that's always there every night, it can become routine and it's not intentional. Because you've got to still be you, and I find that, like, next week I'm taking my mum to the theatre and I'm really looking forward to it, and I've reminded Brendan that he's on the bedtime. But if I don't steal that time, it won't happen. But like tonight, I went to bed late last night, so I'm going to make sure I go to bed early tonight. It's that, isn't it? It's
the little things that you're more likely to do, because if you do set those big ones, you ain't going to do them, and then you really will never have any little self-care moments. It can even just be an extra 5 minutes in the shower, or like you say, go to bed slightly early, or treat yourself to a takeaway and not worry about the cooking for that night. Those little things that you are able to implement, rather than, like you say, trying to completely renew your whole life, become a vegan that goes to the gym 3 times a week.
And
if it's not achievable.
For me, I always have something that's on my want list, whether that's somewhere to go, something to visit, something to watch, something to buy, because I always keep me in the centre of what's going on in my life. I'm not saying that I am the centre, but I'm saying I'm not going to forget about me. What do I want for dinner tonight? Why am I asking everyone else? What do I want? Every now and again, and own a bit of yourself. Still, it's all right to say, I don't want to do the bedtime tonight. You played me up last night. I'm not doing it. You're doing it. I say, well, what are you doing? Oh, I don't know yet. I'm just going to go for a drive, or have that minute, because I think it is quite a lonely place to be, but that's not choice, is it? When you decide, no, I'm taking 5 minutes, I want to go and watch EastEnders, or I want to go and watch whatever it is. You're choosing what you do with because there's 24 hours in a whole day. Surely you can have half an hour for you. And if you can't, then something's gone wrong. I appreciate there are single carers. And maybe don't have support. But like you say, extra few minutes in the shower, choose what you want for breakfast, buy yourself a treat on a Friday. So right, on a Friday, I'm going to go out for my breakfast, or whatever it is. But definitely always do that. And I think mindfulness is really good. We are not good at not doing anything. We're not good at just being. Just sit. Just sit in nature, think. Or I go, oh no, I've had an idea, I better go and write it down. But, just be in your own head. Go for a drive if you don't live near the beach or the woods. Definitely don't go walking in the woods on your own. But, it's about allow time for, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I might watch telly, I might listen to music, I might read a book, I don't know, I might go on my phone, but that time is mine.
And I think you touched on a really important point there, is that it's important to, I guess, adapt it to your own personal circumstance. So you may be someone who has a full-time nanny. You may be someone who's a single parent. Find what works for you in your own personal circumstance and work with that.
And don't feel guilty about it. I think we all do. There is an element of guilt. Like you might say, oh God, I'm going out on Friday night, I hope they're all right. Well, you're guilty for it. It's your life. As long as everyone's, other people's needs are met, I have no issue with saying, no, my time now, because I don't do it very often. And I reserve the right to do that. I know that some people find it harder, but I really do think it's about achievable targets, because we all got pressure to keep moving all the time. Everything's so quick all the time. We want quick results. We want, to be not perfect, but we want our ideas to to be fruitful. And and actually the best way to get where you need to be is slow. And I know that is annoying, because if you go fast you make mistakes and you can overlook actually what the whole purpose.
And you can fail. Yeah, no, it's very true.
Yeah, so that for me is key, really. I think you have got to give yourself an MOT. Am I right mentally? Are my friendships toxic? Who's not helping me? Who's draining me? Am I healthy? Do I need a health check? All of these little things. And then just slowly, you're not going to go to the gym, to the doctors, to the cinema, to a spa all in one day, because you'll be
No.
exhausted. So yeah, just
It's about balance, isn't it? I think that's
slowly.
I like to, slowly and finding a balance. Definitely.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
We've definitely given me a lot to think about. So, I've got two more questions I'd like to ask you. So the next one is, can you share a heartwarming or memorable experience that you've had as a parent carer that has reinforced your determination to advocate for neurodivergent individuals?
Oh, there's so many, so many. I think I would probably simplify it and say, as a parent carer and an advocate, I get lots of joy out of seeing places maybe that I might have encouraged to make reasonable adjustments that allow people to experience things they maybe wouldn't normally, and
Yeah.
see how, an example is, I suppose, Oscar went to baby ballet class once, and I introduced some reasonable adjustments for that, because what he wanted to do was run around the room the opposite way of everyone else, because he wanted the feedback, but he also wanted his eyes closed. So yeah, so I introduced a reasonable adjustment where he wouldn't crash into the other children, where they would all carry a hula hoop.
Ah.
Because otherwise it was like human bumper cars. But he was so happy to be in the room and so happy to be included and so excited that he used to just lose his mind. Like, it was just, so I think it's all of those really tiny reasons. It's not about the big wows, is it? I think that if you remove all your expectations, everything is a wow.
Yeah.
My son.
I can remind you of a moment that is also one that I got to experience with him.
Go on.
And it was the day we met, actually, when we arrived at your runway to walk for Born Anxious, and Chase was close to tears because of the overwhelming environment, and you were the one person who acknowledged that.
I said
and
to him,
lived your message, and you said, you know what, come with me, and you gave us somewhere, and everything about him changed. And it was probably one of his most happiest moments that he can remember himself as well, that he was so proud and exhilarated and excited in that moment. And it was literally a reasonable adjustment that you had made just by taking the time to acknowledge him, recognize that what he needed in that moment, and
straight away
what I needed in that moment even. And it helped. It worked wonders.
And that was a really busy scenario, wasn't it? And I sensed it in him. And it was even just how he was standing, the way his body was formed, his breathing, the look on his face. And I just saw Oscar and I thought, I need to get him out of here now. Like, it's not going to work for him. And we moved him to the holding room that was air conditioned. There was no one in there. It was quiet. And you literally saw him change. And then when he came out, it was a different child, completely different.
Yeah.
And also another, going back to your experience on the runway, one really special moment for me, and we did catch it on camera. As you walked down the runway with Chase, you looked at him and he looked at you and he really wasn't sure. And you gave him a nod, and then his stride. And what you were basically saying was, I know there's loads of people, but it's all right. Because I don't think he realised what he was going to meet when he got out.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was
and his whole face. Yeah. And then when we come off stage, and he was like, "Mum, that was epic. Can we do it again?
Yeah, and then
From the little boy who arrived there in tears because he was so overwhelmed. And the thing is, what you don't realize that day is that up until that moment, I was anxious, but masking
yeah,
and trying to hold it together for him, and also trying to advocate for him whilst also managing my own needs. But you actually managed to help the both of us, and the results were
it's like
beautiful.
creating the safe space. And it's funny, isn't it? Because as a parent carer myself and someone who lives on high alert, like we are on high, like we are so attuned to Oscar's anxiety all of the time. And we react and make those reasonable adjustments without even thinking about it for him. And those senses are so alert that actually straight away I knew that Chase wasn't okay. I just
Yeah,
knew that he felt uncomfortable in that space. And obviously, we did make reasonable adjustments on the day. Some of them were ignored. Some of them we had to reaffirm. And I was really firm. And then when we were in the holding room, one thing that I was really proud of actually is when we were in the holding room, she came in and she said, "Oh, someone's just going to go before you." And I went, "No, we're ready now." Because I thought, you're
yeah,
not going to keep these kids waiting another 10 minutes. But again, they weren't doing it on purpose. They just thought it'd be okay because the majority
yeah,
of people are all right with 10 minutes. But for us, that could have been like 10 hours. Like we
yeah,
were emotionally ready to go now. And she said, "What, are you ready to go now?" And I was like, "Right now." Because it had to
yeah.
be in the moment. You had to seize.
Otherwise, it could never possibly. It may have not happened at all.
Well, we had to regulate a lot of people and a lot of different needs. And that was just the right time where the balance was right. And I was like, if we don't go now, we're not going to get a better
Yeah,
moment than this. I mean, that was probably my biggest. I thought I might have a heart attack on Friday night in the hotel where I was just so anxious, thinking Harvey's in the building. I've got all the models arriving tomorrow, and then I just managed to organise everybody, and then Oscar turned up. So it was almost like self-injurious.
constant.
But we did it and it was great. I'd love to do that again, actually. But the anxiety that went with that for people that were taking part, I took on. The anxiety
Yeah,
about Oscar arriving, I took on. The anxiety for Harvey and his carer, I took on. Plus, then, I mean, really, the rest of the show kind of carried itself. I just hung the clothes on the rail because if you were dealing with neurotypical people, it would have been all about the clothes.
yeah,
That's all anyone would have cared about. They would have been on the rail and it would have been about the look. But for us, it was about the feel.
yeah.
About, is it
All the little details.
regulated enough? Are we, have we got enough sensory stuff backstage? How is everyone feeling? He didn't really care about what people were wearing because it was about what they brought to it. That every single person that walked on there was celebrating a huge achievement for them. All different,
Yeah, yeah.
because
It was beautiful.
it was really amazing, and it felt so surreal because on the way home, I was like, did that just happen? Like it didn't feel like it happened. And then we got to
No.
meet again, didn't we? We got to meet again at Madame Tussauds, which was equally as good.
Yeah,
But the runway for me, it was a little bit of winging it, a little bit of hoping, and all I just kept thinking was, if we can get the sensory profiling done and we can get everybody's reasonable adjustments and we make those, if we can nail that, everything else will be fine.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, that it was very intense, wasn't it?
It was, but it was very, very inspiring. I remember getting home and just I was buzzing, and all I could see was Chase's face when he walked off, when he come off stage, and the way he smiled, and then afterwards, obviously the photos, and his face just lit up, and it brought out something beautiful in him. So
Yeah, and I
yeah,
remember
that
my
was a moment.
PR. I remember my PR, Sarah McDonald. She said to me, "Who is that little boy?" And I said it was Chase, and she said, "He's literally got the most joy. Like he's the most gorgeous. It just makes you feel good. I've never ever seen a child." And I said that was not the child that arrived.
It was genuine
'Cause
happiness and joy. That's what it was.
he was going to go. He was not going to take
Yeah.
part in that.
No, he wasn't.
He was
He
gone.
literally said, "I'm not doing it,"
And that
and
was
he was
like
crying,
Oscar.
and yeah,
That was like Oscar because what happened was Brendan had Oscar's basically got a built-in magnet to his hand, which has got an iPad all the time. And he goes everywhere with it. He looks like a waiter. He looks like he's going to take your menu. Sorry. He looks like he's going to take your order at a restaurant because he's always got an iPad. And Brendan had a little mobile internet device and he hadn't changed it over. And when he got Oscar in, obviously he's then anxious, but then he saw me and he was all right. We had the buggy. Then the internet dropped out and he started to go mad. And by then we were in the hole ready to go on and he was throwing a wobbly. So I had to sprint down the other end of the building to get this machine because Brendan had given him the iPad but not the machine, so it cut out. And literally I had Harvey going on next and I was over the other side of the room.
I think I remember because I think I was trying to help, but I think it had gone past the point of help where Oscar just needed you.
I was like,
yeah,
I can't leave Oscar in this space because he could have run onto the stage. So I literally had to scoop him up in my arm and sprint with him, get it, connect it. I was connecting it while I was running back. And then by the time we got back, it connected again. He was fine. But it was so reactive.
Adapting in the moment.
So going to go badly, badly wrong. And can you imagine that? Harvey walking out, all the models walking out and Oscar screaming. You know,
no, so, you pulled it off, but you, like you say, you adapt in the moment, don't you? And you
just about
do your best.
Being as reactive as they are. You know, like Oscar's really reactive. He headbutt you in the face or whatever in that. So you have to be as reactive. You have to, which Brendan's not very good at. He's not very good at going, what's he crying? He goes to me, what's he crying for? Think about it. Think about it. It's on the iPad, but he's crying. So it's probably a signal. Or maybe he wants you to search for it. He doesn't think. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, he's starting to become unhappy. I'll change the device or I'll get a book or I'll switch what he's thinking about. But I think we just do that. And Brendan would probably do that if he spent more time with him. You know, it's about knowing.
It comes naturally as you go along with experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, we have to be as reactive.
But I also think it's our nature to always be looking ahead, always be problem solving, always thinking and being ready to react if we need to, and being aware of everything and seeing those little things. Not everybody, I guess, is built like that.
No, and also it probably comes from being quite highly anxious and being all right with being anxious, you know, because one of the issues is Oscar doesn't really like people. I love people. Yeah, so he doesn't really like people. He likes people if he knows them, and once you've met him, you're okay. But that first, or I'll say, oh, you know, it's Charlotte, it's okay, or it's Chase, it's okay, and he's okay then. But he doesn't really like people, whereas I like socialising. I like meeting new people. I like going places. I talk to people I don't know, and it annoys me. And he's like, you know everyone. I'm like, I'm just being friendly. I'm just being friendly. I don't know them. He's like, if you don't know them, why are you talking to them? I'm like, because
he sounds like me.
I might be the
You're more like T.
Speaks to them today.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of looking at it, though.
You know, so it is what it is. I think you have to reframe things to make things more palatable. But yes, you do have to recognise that things are hard. You know,
So what would your final... That's perfect. Look at you, just leading me on to the next question. What would your final gem, I'd say drop a gem, what would your final thought, the most important thing that you would like to wrap up, that you may not have touched on, something that you think is important, I guess, to round up your talk with us today?
So something that's a big topic for me at the moment is being a parent of a child that doesn't have, I suppose, selective language. He'll copy what I say, he'll memorise videos, but a big question at the moment is, can Oscar actually make decisions? Does he understand language, or is he leading maybe prompts you're giving him? So there's a bit of a question about that. So a big subject for us is autonomy, I think. And I think something really important to remember is that just because somebody doesn't have words doesn't mean they can't make a choice. You mustn't speak for them.
Yeah.
You know, you need to allow enough space for somebody to make a choice, whether that's visual or through body language, or, you know, people. He is talking to me. You have to listen with more than your ears. Everybody, whether they have a voice or not, is communicating through behaviour or gesture. So for us, autonomy is a really big one, because I don't ever want to remove Oscar's right to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
that if somebody doesn't have words, you need to maybe look with your eyes too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that for me is, don't assume. Don't assume that he can't do this, or don't assume he wants that one. You need to present choices in a way that allow them to choose,
To communicate. Yeah.
and allow time for that process. It's not going to be in your time. It's not
No.
going to be in the time you allow. It's going to be in the time that they process it. So yeah, autonomy for me, because I think we do even for our verbal children. We prompt them to make decisions that suit us, and we've got to stop doing it.
No, it's true.
So for me, that's a really big one at the moment, because we're measuring obviously what the levels of understanding are. Now we know that he's got learning impairment, and I've probably overthought that a bit, because I'm like, oh God, I chose that. Does he want to? But it's not about going back. Don't revisit
No.
things, because that's persecuting yourself. What you do is you deal with the information that you've got right now, and then you make decisions moving forward based on what you know now. It's not about questioning, because when you make decisions before, that was based on the information you had at that time, and you would,
Yeah.
based on the information you had at that time, would still agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't always know all the information. We're learning, aren't we? We're growing.
But it's about it's like acknowledgement and making the effort to always do your best, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've heard people go, why don't you like that? You like that. No, you're telling them they like it.
Yeah.
Don't do
And to be honest with you, even children who are able to verbalize will sometimes not want what they're saying because of the environment or how things are presented to them and what they think others might want them to choose. Whereas, again, if you pay attention to someone's body language or their emotions or how they react, that will tell you so much more, because communication is only a very small percentage of actual words, whereas body language, manner, attitude, all of those emotions are the real communication. And it's
an
about taking the
environment.
time to really acknowledge.
An environment as well, Oscar may not want to go into the hot tub when he's just been to football practice, because he might be tired. But
Yeah.
actually, if you give him an hour, he might decide he wants to. So it's about presenting the choice more than once, presenting the choice in more than one way, and making sure that the
Yes.
choice actually is theirs, not
Yeah.
what you want, not what suits you, and obviously within limits. We're not going to let kids
Yeah.
have McDonald's every night for dinner. I'm not talking about making all the choices. Oh, I'm going to bed at midnight now. That's good for me. No,
Within reason.
yeah, within reason. So yeah, for me, it's about that. Allow that exchange of information to take place to make a choice. And don't assume that because somebody's not speaking, maybe they have words, but they're anxious, so they're not speaking.
Yeah.
That they don't want to. You've got to adapt that environment that allows them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's actually a really important tool. Chase, as you know, is able to articulate himself, but some days he may not understand. So whenever, for example, if I'm taking him to a new setting and they say, what are his needs? And I'll say, well, he actually gets on quite well in most circumstances, but please be aware that you may ask him a question and he won't understand. And it's not because he has no communication. You might just need to adjust the way you ask him or how you present it to him. Or again, give him the time to take it in, process, and give you an answer. Don't then rush off. And there's so many things that people can learn about communication if they just took the time and had the patience to take notice.
yeah, and also, it's about maximising experiences, isn't it? And we don't want people to miss out on experiences because of miscommunications. So
No.
that's what I'm concentrating more now with Oscar. It's about, is him having more autonomy making decisions going to lessen his anxiety because he feels more in control? And if so, what can we then look at to do that? And it's hard. It's really hard,
Yeah.
So yeah,